Hey, welcome to day 58 of my little project where I, bring a new album every day and I give it a little review. And today we actually have Rise Against, which is one of my favorite bands, although I never heard like some of their albums. And today it's the Unraveling, which is their first studio album that they put out not even under the name Rise Against. It was the name before, Transistor Things, Thoughts, something along those lines. I forget. But yeah, and I've never heard this album, so despite being a huge fan, so I decided, hey, let's actually do it today. Let's take the time and listen to it. And let me tell you, when I first saw the number of songs this album had, I was like 16 songs. Holy shit, this is a very long. It's not. It's like half an hour, maybe 40 minutes long. Yeah, despite having 16 songs, it's very short. It's definitely on the shorter side of things that I've reviewed. I reviewed EPs that had almost more runtime than this. So it's very interesting to just see where Rise Against started. And let me tell you, despite having 16 songs, and the reason as to why it's half an hour long, 40 minutes long, is because most of the songs are between a minute to 3 minutes long. Like most songs are 1-2 minutes. That's why there's so many songs, despite the runtime not being that big. Yeah, look. These shows a lot of the punk roots that Rise Against had, primarily the fact that a lot of the songs are just a lot of drumming, a lot of guitars, a lot of bass going on, just screaming. That's it. That's most of the songs. There are a couple of songs that do have melodies, and you can definitely hear a lot of Rise Against signature sounds there, especially a lot of the way that the chorus are sung, or like some of the melodies in the chorus and everything. You can clearly see that, hey, this is Rise Against, or this is what you're used to. But look, outside of that, my god, the rest of the songs are so not Rise Against. Like, okay, technically there are some elements in the composition in some of the songs that you can see, like, okay, this is punk Rise Against, like even in later songs, even in later albums, there's some moments in compositions where you're like, oh, okay, so this came from their punk roots. And I think this album is really good at showcasing that, but it's not very good at being an album. Look, I don't know if this is because of every punk is like this, but it just feels very unfocused. I understand that punk is all about energy and it's all about like releasing that energy and sort of making a statement, but let me tell you, like, a lot of this album and a lot of the punk I heard is just very unfocused. It's very discombobulated. It's very all over the place. It's just not very good, and I think that this album is exactly that. Like, a lot of the songs are very high energy, everything's going on, but then you sort of ask yourself, okay, what's the point of the song? Like, what are we doing here, right? Because to me it just felt like in a lot of the songs we're just making noise. And look, something with the mixing that needs to be said. I could not hear the singing. Like, I could hear the singing, but it felt like the singing was in the background, which made it even harder to listen to some of the lyrics. And from what I heard, some of the lyrics are not like the good writing that Rise Against is kind of known for. It's a bit very rough around the edges, because you can clearly see that this was like their first album together, and overall just not, I don't know, I just didn't like it too much. But yeah, like, the production is so like all over the fucking place, because okay, the production is kind of like consistent in the sense of, my god, is it like bad though, because again, like, the drums especially are way too present in the song. Like, the drums are unbelievably present. The drums are almost the loudest of everything, and then the bass and the guitar are also there together, and then the singing is just like on the background, because everything seems to have the same level, but because the singing is weaker than a lot of the instruments, it just feels weaker when you're actually listening to it. So unfortunately, on that regard, I gotta say, my god, I did not enjoy that. Now, outside of all of that, right, and when it comes to all of the songs that I heard, look, as bad as it was, at the same time there were a lot of sparkles of, oh, okay, I understand why people like this, and even then, like, the punk energy, I think that also came to define a lot of the energy that Rise Against would have on later albums, and it would come to define Rise Against. And I understand why people, kind of get disappointed that sometimes newer albums from them aren't as, higher energy and as aggressive as this album was, because this album was all out aggressive. So I get that, but at the same time, man, I don't know. I listen to this and it's hard to justify them going back to the aggressive sound without all of the, cool melodies that they make and all of the like cool riffs that they write and everything. Like their newer songs, they're not punk, they're alt. They're more alternative metal than, or I guess even alternative rock, if you want to call this rock, than they are punk. But let me tell you, they're so much better for it. I personally prefer them far more than I prefer albums like this. Because again, like, the entire album and a lot of the songs are just sitting there like, what the fucking point? Like, what are we doing here? I asked myself quite a lot, what are we doing here? Because I didn't know, right? Like, the only song that, in my opinion, had any semblance of Rise Against, of being Rise Against, and of being an actual song was Ever Changing, right? That song felt like the only one that had some structure going to it, that had a lot of the brilliances that we came to know Rise Against for later on. Because outside of that, like, I just, it feels like a lot of the songs are very aggressive. They don't have time to actually develop, they don't have time to sort of create an identity for themselves. And then in a lot of them, a very common problem is they start and then they're over. Like, there's no time for you to get, like, the songs are already so aggressive. They already have a lot of drumming and everything, and it's fast paced, and there's the high energy and everything, and then you don't even have time to get acquainted with them. It's not very favorable on that regard. And another issue that I've noticed in the entirety of the album pretty much is, I think that a huge part of this album is just hearing guitars fade. I'm not joking when I say this. I think every single song has a guitar fade in the end, especially the album closer. The album closer is like 20 seconds of a guitar fade out. I'm not joking, it's a real issue in this album. It would not surprise me that of like the 40 minutes, half an hour runtime, that like easily 2 minutes was purely just guitar fade out, cause yeah, there's a lot of it, which obviously doesn't help the album and everything. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all of the notes that I wrote down, just seeing here through the album tracks if I have everything that I want to say. Oh yeah, The Art of Losing, despite being less than 2 minutes long, and despite not being exactly the best song either, it also shows a lot of the brilliance when it comes to a lot of the sparks of melodic Rise Against. I think it's a very good example of that. But the song itself was, again, while it did show sparks, it wasn't like the best, and that's sort of the story of this album. So yeah, with all of that being said, then let's go to my 5 meter. And honestly, right now my 5 meters is a 4 out of 10. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know, maybe if I heard it more I would appreciate it more, because I think that sometimes that happens, and I think that this is that sort of album. But quite frankly, yeah, knowing what I know of older, or I guess quote unquote newer, because they came after this, but essentially knowing what I know of other Rise Against songs, yeah, this album is a little bit of a disappointment, and I was reading a little bit on the production of this album and like what went into it, and apparently it was just like crunch during a week where they did like 20-hour days or something. So yeah, that probably explains why the fucking mix is so rough, and why a lot of these songs sort of feel unfinished, where because I don't think that punk songs need to be unfinished, or that you don't or you can't have a certain structure or whatever. But yeah, this album definitely feels on the side of the energy is there. They definitely have the energy, they definitely have the will to make songs, and they definitely do have the talent as well, because from what I heard, it wasn't that bad, except for the drumming. I'm sorry, like, I don't want to like shit on the drumming, but if I like, there's this pattern going on in this album that essentially is the same. Hi-hats and snare all the fucking time, all the time. For an album that has a lot of drumming, that has a lot of aggression. But take Slipknot, for example. Oh, Slipknot has a lot of aggression, especially drumming is a huge part of that. Okay, but the drumming is interesting, it's diverse, there's a lot going on. Here, the drumming is hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, snare, hi-hat, snare. Like, sometimes both at the same time, just completely going at it, and that's it. That's it. That's pretty much the entire album, right? Sometimes they involve maybe like a pedal or something, like maybe the drum, but yeah, mostly just like snare, just banging it out, banging it out, banging it out. That's it, right? Which, for as aggressive and as much presence the drums have in this album because of the mixing, it made me tired throughout the album. So yeah, I think 4 out of 10. I think that's fair, honestly. With more time in the oven, maybe I would like it more, but for now, 4 out of 10.